All right, welcome to the WTF Divorce Podcast. Today we are lucky to be joined by stand-up comedian Gianmarco Soresi. I've seen Gianmarco on Instagram, on Netflix, Comedy Central. He's been on James Corden, but mostly his videos on Instagram about divorce are what made me reach out to him. Welcome to the show.
Hello, happy to be here. Always happy to talk about my parents' divorce. Here, therapy, on stage, everywhere.
Yeah, let's dig into it. This will be like a therapy session, but a child of divorce is a different perspective that we haven't talked about much. Tell us about how it all went down, how old you were, all that.
Yeah, so my parents got divorced when I was a baby, so I don't remember them ever being together. I have the photo album from their wedding, and I keep it on my bookshelf with the rest of my fiction. And I basically grew up going back and forth. And my mom ended up marrying my dad's former lawyer. It was part of the settlement, and it was tough. So basically, my mom remarried. I basically had a stepfather from the time I was cognizant, and my dad was kind of a serial dater. He was a very good looking guy. He hooked up with my kindergarten teacher at one point.
Wow.
And according to my mom, she got busted. She sent like a love note back to my father via my lunchbox, and that's how my mom found out. And they got her fired. So it was pretty a lot of, there were custody battles, fights over if I was at my dad's for the weekend, but then it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day on a Monday. The question was, did that carry over into my father's weekend, or did I have to go to my mom's that day? And a lot of just being put in the middle, a lot of very awkward pickups and drop-offs. I used to think my mom was the perpetrator of the awkwardness, or my stepfather. But then as I got older, I realized a lot of it was my dad making things very difficult for everyone involved.
Did you feel, so you always hear, don't put the kids in the middle, they're not the problem. Did you feel like, what does a kid feel like when they're going through that?
I think like my mom, whenever I came from my dad's house, she would always be like, you always act different when you come from your dad's. Or like, you're acting like your dad right now. And that must have had deep psychological harm. So it was, I think my dad, he had a fantasy of getting full custody. And I think that made him kind of paint my mom and my stepfather as these very strict, and they were more strict than my single dad, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. But just painted them in a light where my dad always intimated that if I ever wanted to testify that I wanted to be with him all the time, I was welcome to do that. So it was I think it poisoned my mind in that sense. Now, I never did it because I was worried about hurting my mom's feelings, and that's the sense I was put in the middle. I think it's very hard because the rules are very different. My stepfather, we weren't allowed to watch The Simpsons at my mom's house because my stepfather he didn't know what it was. Where at my dad's house, I was watching South Park. I was watching any action movie I wanted. And so there was kind of a constant recalibration, or for example, I had to take out my Eminem CDs. When I went to my mom's house, I wasn't allowed to have my Eminem CDs. So I'd have to take them. I'd have to remove certain elements of my life before I went to my mom's house. And again, it's like maybe those rules were okay or not. I don't really know, but I think it made me feel very disjointed to constantly have to be readjusting the way I dressed, the way I behaved, whether I cursed. My dad cursed all the time. He'd say, fuck, shit, bitch. Then he'd hand me the phone. I'd be like, hi, Mom. It was just I think a disjointed life. And I fantasized about when I could just have one place. as opposed to bringing a big duffel bag. I still pack, I overpack. And I still think it's partly that some kind of thing of like, I need to bring my home with me wherever I go.
Wow. I'm thinking about my kids as I pack their Nintendo and their blanket and all these things. And I'm like, man, is this what is going on in their minds? Because did you like romanticize like my friends, their parents are married. How come we can't just be like that?
I think I never could. It possibly. I see those pictures from my parents' wedding, and it's unfathomable to me to see them together because I didn't grow up with it. Maybe if I had, I would have imagined the days. I think I was more like, I never thought of them like getting back together. When I was a kid, I just wanted to be at my dad's because he was single. He had, he would date. And it, of course, I think it screwed me up when those women would leave. But when they would date, what he used to do, he would buy presents for me, but say that it was from them. He'd give it to them to give to me, like a dog. And I would go, wow, this woman comes bearing gifts. She's amazing. So I think in that sense, like my dad's was just more fun, and I just wanted to be there all the time. But I don't think it was balanced nutritionally, including like the food. He would let me eat whatever I wanted. He'd let me buy whatever I wanted, watch whatever I wanted. But thank God I had my mom's house to balance it out to a degree. But it was kind of like too much of one thing at this house, too much of another thing at this house.
Yeah, that's a lot to put on a kid. Do you think when you talked about the girlfriends coming in and now we at least have some guidance, don't introduce your kids right away, but back then your dad didn't know. Was that a thing where you're like getting to know somebody and then they just leave?
I mean, yeah, my dad it wasn't necessarily like one night stands I was meeting, but they were just like women that, looking back, I'm sure he cheated on them. And I don't know what the solution is. I feel it must be very hard to date with children. I don't think my dad wasn't like bringing me on the first date or anything like that, but it was very hard. I remember distinctly one woman, we used to play Monopoly together. That was like the thing we do. And then she would have to like have a breakup with me. Like I remember her distinctly. We sat in the car, which is, that's always those kind of conversations. You're in the car because one person's about to go immediately away. And I asked her, she said, oh, just so you know, I got a promotion at work. I'm going to be really busy. I won't be around as much anymore. And I said, oh, are we still going to get to play Monopoly? And she said, yeah, at some point. And I remember it because we never did. I'm still waiting. I still got the board set up here, waiting for it to come back. So I think it's hard because you can't guarantee a partner before you bring them in the kid's life. But I think my dad probably could have waited a little bit longer, or maybe made a commitment to not cheat if he was going to bring them in my life. Because what would happen is they would vanish. No one would give me the real explanation of what would happen. So it was just confusing. Because I think even that same woman, like years later at the grocery store, I ran into her with her like, 3-year-old son. And it was just that weird feeling of like, it felt like running into an ex, where I was just like, who the hell is he? And I think if you are going to date, you have to be more transparent with your kid about what's going on. Because I think a lot of times parents think they can lie, and it's not that their kid will figure out the truth. It's just that their kid will feel like the world takes people away, or that people just disappear and it's nothing you did. And rather than tell me, yeah, we're going to play Monopoly someday, I wish she had said, it's not you, it's your father. And that's why I'm leaving.
Right.
But I don't envy people who have to date with kids. That is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I'm learning because I'm dating with kids, and it's very confusing when you introduce them, when they leave. It's just like, but you do hear it builds, it's real life. So they are getting exposed to stuff that a lot of kids are not.
Of course, and I think it's just a matter of like, again, I don't have kids, so I'm not going to pretend to be an authority here, but I feel like parents often they undershare. And so it's like if you want to involve the kid, you're going to have to tell them about the breakup. It's the same with like a dog dying. You can tell them you put the dog in a farm upstate, but the kid's going to know something's off, and one day you're going to have to tell them, no, we killed the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to you. It feels like a foolish thing to lie, because that's only going to make them confused. They're going to know something's off, and then ultimately they're going to have a mistrust for the person who lied to them.
Yeah, it seems like having the uncomfortable conversations, and they are uncomfortable for the parents, probably more so than the kids in a lot of ways. You just gotta, handle it gently, but you're better off telling them that there is no Santa Claus.
Because they'll find out. My dad just always took that approach. Same with like drugs. It's like his general, like he would act like he didn't do drugs, and then I'd be like, you went to Woodstock, of course you did drugs. Or he'd say never smoke, I never smoke, and I'd find a pack of cigarettes in one of the drawers. It's just like you can't lie to your kids.
Mm-hmm. Especially today, they're going to find out. So
oh my God.
So clearly you turned out okay. I mean, you turned into a stand-up comedian. Do you think divorce?
I don't know if you just said I turned out okay. I turned into a stand-up comedian. I don't know if those two go together at all. I think I'm fine. I think I did a lot of like therapy, and I'm self-aware to know the ways that it affected me. But in a way, I think it made me cynical in a way that I think is appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And then other ways where it's probably a lot to deal with. I'm sure I'm not the easiest boyfriend in the world. I like to wait a couple decades before I say I love you to a partner. But yeah, I'm okay for sure.
Right. I mean, those seem like qualities and patterns that people from married parents go through also. So we probably overestimate the impact that it's really having on our kids.
Yeah, I think we're all more self-aware. Even if you have parents who are together, you do know, like, you understand the truth of these things, and people are finding their own definitions of what marriage is to them, and I think that's for the best. I sometimes wonder if my father, in today's day and age, would he have been ethically non-monogamous? Maybe he would have had the awareness to go, okay, I'm a cheater, or I could be in a healthy relationship. I don't know. But I hope a day someone like him could be like, okay, I'm gonna be a swinger, maybe something,
mm-hmm.
because the traditional thing was not made for him. That's for sure.
And he wasn't even on the dating apps then. This was before that time, I guess, huh?
Before the end, he didn't need the dating apps. My father, I mean, he would like, and I never would do things like this. But he'd tell the waiter, like, hey, here's my card, give it to that woman at that table over there. And he had the kind of looks where that would work, shockingly. Mm-hmm. And now he's a little older, and I think he didn't necessarily develop some people skills because he got away with it just by having a good head of hair.
It's not just women, men too. They can get away with murder if they're looking good, huh?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But it's not a good thing. It comes back to bite you.
Right.
You got to learn how to be a human.
Right. Man, these are great. I mean, you have so many divorce jokes. It's probably awkward to tell it on the spot. You have anything else in mind that you're thinking about divorce, or something funny that you want to share, or real?
I mean, no, I think my favorite divorce joke that I wrote, it was the early one, was my parents got divorced when I was 7 days old. So like most kids, my first word was mama, but my next 5 were told me to tell you. But I do say that the divorce, as much as my parents fought, is the reason I became a performer. Because when I got cast as the lead in Little Shop of Horrors, sophomore year of high school, my mom and dad sat right next to each other in the front row. And my mom brought this big bouquet of daffodils because she remembered my dad is allergic.
Oh,
So, for better or for worse, it's why I am what I
yeah.
am.
Builds character. This is refreshing to hear that we can all turn out okay, and that I'm a big believer in you got to laugh at this stuff, or else you're gonna cry and lose your mind. So thank you for bringing some humor to the world of divorce.
Yeah, all I'll say is, listen, if you have kids and you have divorced parents, it's going to be a lifelong struggle to not badmouth the other person in front of your kid. It's going to be lifelong. It's going to be in subtle ways and not subtle ways. If that is the struggle, but it is impossible. It is impossible to hate your ex and not have it affect your kid.
Hmm.
And the whatever fucking ayahuasca trip you need to take to find respect and love for your ex-partner and to be able to communicate with them and to be in the same room with them, you have to do it, or it will make your kid resent you. My mom and stepfather, they got divorced, and it's one of those things, he will not speak to her. And it's like, well, buddy, you will only hurt the relationship with your kids because that is their mom. That is their mom. And so that's the only thing. Like, if the one thing I know for sure, I don't know a lot of things in this world, but I know for sure that you cannot, if you have a kid and you're raising them with your ex-partner, you cannot just decide to hate that ex pure. You can resent them. You're a human being, but you can't hate them and not have it affect your relationship with your kid. That's the one thing I'll say for sure.
That is great advice to leave it on. Gianmarco, tell people where they can find you.
Find me everywhere at Gianmarco Soresi, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of the things. And then my podcast is called The Downside. And we always talk a good amount about divorce with my guests.
Love it. Thanks for being on. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Rob. Be well.